It was an ordinary night, or so it seemed. The quiet suburban roads were lit softly by street lamps, casting long shadows and painting everything in an amber hue. The rhythmic hum of tires on asphalt mixed with the faint strains of jazz music playing from a sleek black sedan, creating an atmosphere of calm and reflection. Inside the car sat two men, Ethan Walker, a seasoned police captain with over 15 years of service, and his close friend, Marcus Reed, a community leader and social activist. They had just left an inspiring charity event aimed at providing scholarships and supplies for underprivileged children in their city. The event had been a success. Smiles from grateful kids, warm thanks from parents, and pledges from sponsors filled their hearts with hope. "You saw their faces tonight," Marcus said, his voice full of energy. "We're making a difference, Ethan. One event at a time." Ethan smiled as he focused on the road ahead. "It's not just about handing out scholarships," he replied. "We're giving them a reason to believe in something better, a future they can build for themselves." The conversation drifted between optimism and plans for the next steps in their mission. But as they rounded a bend in the road, the moment of peace was shattered. Red and blue lights flared up behind them. A sharp whoop of a siren followed, cutting through the calm night. Ethan's expression darkened for a brief second. "Stay calm," he said, slowing down and guiding the car to the shoulder. Marcus glanced nervously over his shoulder. "What do they want? We didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Ethan said, keeping his hands on the wheel in clear sight. "But we'll do exactly what they say. No sudden movements." As a squad car parked behind them, two officers stepped out. One of them, Officer Brandon Shaw, walked with an arrogant swagger, his jaw set and eyes cold. Behind him followed Sergeant Daniel Brooks, older and more reserved but watchful. Brandon approached the driver's window and knocked twice with sharp, impatient knuckles. Ethan lowered the window, slowly. "Good evening, officer," Ethan greeted evenly. "Is there a problem?" Brandon didn't answer right away. He stared at Ethan, his gaze scanning the interior. "License and registration." Ethan complied, handing over his documents without protest. "Can I ask why we've been stopped?" he added calmly. Brandon barely glanced at the papers before shifting his focus to Marcus in the passenger seat. "And you?" "ID." Marcus frowned. "I'm not driving. Why do you need?" "Don't argue." Brandon snapped, his tone hostile. "Give me your ID." Ethan gave Marcus a subtle nod. Marcus sighed and handed over his ID reluctantly. Brandon took it without thanks and returned to his patrol car. "They're fishing," Marcus whispered. "You know why this is happening." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "I know, but we'll keep calm. We don't escalate this." After several tense minutes, Brandon returned. "Step out of the vehicle. Both of you." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "Officer, with respect, we have the right to know why we're being asked to exit the vehicle." Brandon's lips curled into a smirk. "Because you're acting suspicious. Don't make me repeat myself." Knowing resistance would only worsen the situation, Ethan and Marcus stepped out, the red and blue lights flashing across their faces. Brandon positioned himself near his holstered firearm as if anticipating trouble. Sergeant Brooks hung back, saying nothing, but his discomfort was palpable. Brandon ordered them to stand against the car. He shone his flashlight inside the vehicle, peering through the windows, inspecting the back seat. "You don't have a warrant," Ethan said quietly. "We don't consent to a search." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "You got something to hide?" Sergeant Brooks cleared his throat and finally spoke. "Brandon, we're only supposed to be doing a document check." Brandon shot him a glare. "They're suspicious." Marcus exhaled sharply. "This is harassment." Brandon whirled on him. "One more word, and I'll find another charge to add." Ethan raised a calming hand. "Marcus, let it go." But Brandon wasn't done. "Turn around. You're both being cuffed for officer safety." At that moment, Ethan spoke, his voice cutting through the night. "You're making a mistake. I am Captain Ethan Walker from Central Precinct." Sergeant Brooks looked stunned. Brandon didn't react. "I don't care who you are," he sneered. "Turn around." Reluctantly, they complied. Cold metal tightened around their wrists. "This is beyond wrong," Marcus muttered. "And you know it." The situation grew even more volatile as a bystander parked nearby and began recording on her phone. "Why are you cuffing them?" she called out. "They didn't do anything wrong." Brandon barked at her to leave, but she refused. "I have the right to record," she said firmly. Tension thickened as more onlookers stopped to watch. Sergeant Brooks appeared conflicted but stayed silent. Minutes later, Brooks finally ran Ethan's ID through the onboard computer. His expression shifted when he saw the screen light up with Ethan's credentials and rank. He whispered urgently to Brandon, "He's a captain. You cuffed a senior officer." Brandon's smug confidence wavered, his face paling. He muttered something under his breath and fumbled to unlock the cuffs. "I didn't know," he said to Ethan. "That's the problem," Ethan replied quietly. "You didn't bother to know." The woman recording stepped closer. "I got everything on video," she said. "This is going public." Brooks took over then, apologizing profusely. "Captain Walker," Ethan's voice remained steady. "Apologies aren't enough. You need to change how you do your job." The incident didn't end with Ethan and Marcus driving away. The video spread quickly across social media, captioned, "Senior Police Captain Detained for Being Black." Hashtags like #Justice for Captain Walker and #In Racial Profiling trended within hours. Outrage erupted. News outlets picked up the story. Ethan's face appeared on national broadcasts. Commentators debated the state of policing and systemic racism. Inside his home, Ethan's family reeled from the exposure. His mother's voice cracked as she said, "You worked so hard to serve them, and this is how they treat you." At Marcus's home, his sister wept. "You're the reason I still believe in good people," she said. "How could they do this to you?" The police department scrambled for damage control. They announced an internal investigation and placed Officer Brandon Shaw on administrative leave. But Ethan and Marcus knew it couldn't end there. They organized a community forum called Justice Beyond the Badge. Hundreds attended. Ethan spoke first. "If this can happen to me," he said, "it can happen to anyone. The system needs to change." Marcus added, "We can't stop until justice is more than a promise. It's a reality." Their message resonated. The forum produced concrete proposals: mandatory bias training, transparency in stop-and-search data, and a civilian oversight board. Ethan's leadership drew national praise. He published a book, "The Uniform Doesn't Hide the Truth," chronicling his journey and calling for reform. Marcus spearheaded school programs, teaching kids they deserved respect and dignity. Weeks later, the disciplinary board ruled. Brandon Shaw was suspended indefinitely, stripped of his badge, and required to undergo racial sensitivity training before any future employment in law enforcement. At a press conference, Ethan addressed the city. "We are not asking for special treatment. We are demanding equal protection." The city changed, slowly but surely. Ethan's book became a bestseller. Marcus's programs flourished. They spoke on panels, at universities, and to policymakers. One evening, after a talk at a local school, Ethan found himself helping a family whose car had crashed on a dark highway. Pulling them from danger reminded him why he joined the force. Back in the precinct, Captain Ethan Walker became a symbol of integrity. He addressed his officers sternly but fairly. "This badge is not a license to judge," he told them. "It's a commitment to serve." The department underwent sweeping reforms. Officers who resisted found themselves on the outside looking in. Those who embraced change helped rebuild trust. Months later, at a community barbecue, a young boy pointed at Ethan. "That's the captain who made it safe for us again," he whispered to his mom. Ethan smiled, humbled. He and Marcus stood side by side, knowing their fight wasn't over, but they were no longer alone. Their story became part of a larger movement, a fight for justice, for fairness, and for the belief that dignity is not negotiable.